Hey there, I'm Jen, and welcome to my studio space, also known as my living room. I will mention that we might have some guest appearances from my fur babies, Cooper, Cola, and Gigi. And thank you for joining me for this first of 4 stress proofing classes for a COVID winter. Now, some of you might be watching this saying, Jen, I watched last week and I thought that this was live. Well, I kind of had some technical issues again with this first class. So this in fact is a re-recording of the first class. So I will do my best to try to recreate that experience, but know that today is today and 2 weeks ago was 2 weeks ago. So when I was thinking about putting together this offering, I had no idea we'd be back in lockdown here in Toronto. So whether you're joining live or watching as a recording, I wanted to acknowledge that it may have felt really hard to get here today. And that's totally okay. It's been a really tough year. And while our circumstances may vary, we're all going through similar, challenging, and difficult times. So let's just start by thanking our bodies and minds for showing up for us here today. So just pause for a moment. Notice how it feels in your body when you consider thanking yourself in this way. If it feels okay, perhaps you can try thanking yourself out loud. For example, thank you, Jen, or thank you, body. Thank you for showing up for me today. And then just let that sit with you for a moment. So a few things before we begin to move today. I will always try to offer variations to explore movement together, but you always have my permission to be what I call the naughty student, and do what you need to do if what I'm suggesting doesn't serve you. Pausing and observing, or leaving the class entirely. Please, please, please always do you. I challenge you to approach the class without an agenda or expectation of an outcome. See if you can put aside your ideas for how you think things should look and feel, and just investigate what you are experiencing in the present moment. And can you do that with non-judgmental curiosity and kindness towards yourself? Because guess what? Whatever you experience, it's all true. Bringing attention and awareness to the body can bring up unfamiliar sensations. So if this happens, see if you can get really curious about what it is you're experiencing. Is it uncomfortable because this is the first time your body has moved in this way? Or what we're doing isn't what you normally do in your practice? Our posture or even postural habits that your body has become really comfortable with, like sitting. Or is what you're noticing pain or painful, or bringing up even some level of fear, and something that you need to actually back off from or stop doing altogether? It's all good information that you can use to make choices about what you need to be doing moving forward. All is to say, give yourself permission to have your own experience in your body, in your own way. So with all that out of the way, let's all take a breath and maybe give the body a bit of a jiggle. I imagine that I'm embodying my inner snow globe here. I'm sort of getting all of that beautiful snow to start to get suspended in the liquid. And then just start to invite your body to do whatever your body needs to do in this moment. And this is really how practice begins, how our practice is going to begin. A practice in noticing what it is that we need. And that may not always be clear or obvious. So let's just explore maybe some stretching, reaching the arms really wide, maybe above the head, maybe some reaching. That feels nice for me at least. Maybe some twisting and contracting through one side, stretching out through another. So you can totally mirror me, or you could even think about the unstructured movements of dogs and cats, or even wild animals in their natural environments. You just sort of like move. You're not really worried about what that looks like. It's all about how it feels to them. So see if you can let yourself be guided by sensation. Ask yourself, how do you want to move? And then let your body move in that way. And then pause when you're ready to pause. And of course, if it's feeling really good to be moving like that, just keep doing that. Wherever you are right now, just take a really quick notice of what's going on in your mind, your body, any sensations, sort of generally looking at that. And then we're going to unpack the noticing piece a bit more with a 5-point check-in activity. So you may want to have a pen or paper handy, or a journal or other note-taking device to document what it is that you're noticing. And we're going to repeat this 5-point check-in again at the end of class. And you might find it interesting to compare your practice notes. So to begin, your mind. Observe the quality of your thoughts, your mental focus, the clarity. Do you maybe associate with feeling very clear-headed, or maybe a little bit foggy, or somewhere in between there? Just jot down a couple points, noting whatever comes to mind. And then bringing your awareness to sensations in your body. And what are you noticing is most aware and present for you right now in terms of sensations? Sensations could be sensing temperature, contact with your body on different surfaces, itchiness, tension, ease. And then third, we'll bring our awareness to our breath. Where are you experiencing your breath in your body most clearly at this point? Maybe the nostrils, the chest, the belly, anywhere else? Do you notice that it feels restricted or even held in any way? Don't try to change or manage it, just notice it. And then what feelings and emotions are you most aware of? So your emotions, and that could be happiness, sadness, angry. Just a few points there. Maybe you're aware of just one. Maybe there's sort of a bit of an orchestra going on. It's all true. It's all good. And then last piece is your energy. Do you maybe relate to feeling a bit fatigued right now, or really energized? Maybe even a bit of both. And again, if nothing's coming to mind, or you're not sure, it's totally fine. The activity, if you continue to explore, will get easier with some practice. And again, it's all true. So next, with all that info in hand, let's try to organize how we are in this moment on a scale of 1 to 10. And I acknowledge that you are more than a scale, but this is a helpful way for tracking our progress using this scale. So look at it like that. I value you more than just being a scale. 1, maybe you associate or resonate with feeling a bit spacey, shut down, disengaged, have low motivation, or sort of a low rev gear about yourself today in this moment. And on the other side of that, number 10, maybe that's feeling really revved up, ready for action. But in that, there's maybe a quality of feeling irritated or frustrated or cranky, or just overwhelmed, and really don't have a way to discharge or provide an outlet for sort of this frenzied state about yourself. And then number 5, we could think about this as our Goldilocks state, if you're familiar with that story, or sort of that just right state, that in this present moment, generally speaking, you feel focused, maybe a bit tired, but you're here, you're present, and it feels a little bit of comfortable, maybe you feel a bit comfortable or easy in your body. It's the sweet spot. Okay, so we're now going to move into our movement practice, our first one. So I'm going to stand up for this first part, and you can too. You can do that for the whole class, but you can also do a lot of this class sitting in a chair, on a couch, or even on the floor if that serves you. So just, again, please do you and practice in a way that best honors and serves what you need. So I'll just reorient myself here a little bit. And now we'll expand that, bring this down a little bit. Here's the studio. Okay, I think we can, okay, this is good. This looks good. Hopefully everyone can see me, most of me, and hear me. So just to begin, we're going to start with an activity called orienting. And that is just really about starting to look around the space you're in and orienting to it with your gaze, with your vision. So see if you can even arrive to this activity like this is the very first time you are looking at this space. And if you're like me, you've probably undoubtedly been almost stuck in this space for quite some time, or feeling that way at least. So see if you can kind of arrive with a quality of, this is the first time I'm in this space and I'm having a look around. So just begin by noticing different textures about the objects you might be looking at. Maybe it starts at the floor, just noticing the texture of the floor. Maybe it's a wood surface or a tile surface or a carpet or a variation, combination. And then as you maybe lift your gaze a little bit more towards your walls, more the horizon, maybe you're aware of colors, shelving, even a quality of shininess or matteness, or a matte-like quality to different surfaces. And remember to bring the gaze up towards the ceiling. That's part of your space too. And just have a look around there. Maybe aware of some things that maybe need a little dusting, which I'm very aware of as I scan my space right now. And then we're also going to take our awareness back behind us too. Don't forget to scan the area behind us. We often forget about that because we're sort of moving in this direction. So looking behind us from floor to ceiling, and even just notice that if you were to change your orientation and put your back towards another wall, maybe a wall that doesn't have an opening like mine does, and continue to just sort of scan around, notice if that changes anything for you. This is a really great way to start off any practice or even arrive into any new space, because it sort of provides a sense of safety to your nervous system. It's sort of messaging that as you're looking around your environment, you can sort of say, okay, in this moment, it is generally true that I am safe and I am supported. And that can just be a really nice way to help settle some anxiety you might experience if you are coming into a new space, but also even in your old space, the space you're most familiar with. So then when you're ready, we'll do a little bit of grounding in our vertical space now. So just coming to stand back on your mat or whatever surface you're practicing on. Just take a moment to bring your awareness now to your feet and that connection, that space between your feet and the floor. Maybe scrunch your toes a little bit. Activate, amplify that attention. And then when you're ready, maybe just start to add a little bit of a sway forward and back. So bringing movement from the heels into the toes, maybe a little bit too much and you throw yourself off balance, and that's okay. Just come back to that swaying forward and back, rocking, just exploring the edges, and also taking that from side to side. So shifting the weight now from each foot a little bit, and then maybe just sort of either connecting the dots, almost like you're stirring your whole body in space over your feet. Or maybe it's a little less organized than that, and you're sort of just shifting and swaying and rocking. Just aware of the organization of your body in space. You can bring our hands to our hips and now just sort of make the connection between transferring of our feet on the floor and how that translates all the way up to our hips. And then again, sort of bring that awareness a little bit more up the spine into our rib cage and shoulders. And again, bringing our hands maybe to our shoulders. Just noticing that as we shift our weight, the organization of our shoulders over our hips. You feel like you kind of lost a connection there, maybe bring one hand back to a hip point. And then lastly, we'll bring that awareness up to now our head. And again, maybe bringing our hands to our head. We're just noticing the organization of our head, moving with our shoulders, moving with our hips as we transfer and play with weight in our feet. And again, hand on the head to help with that. Maybe bring the other to your shoulder, to the hip. Just really aware of how your body is organized and all connected, even when sometimes we kind of feel disconnected. And then we'll just pause for a moment, maybe bring a little bit of stillness to the body. And then when you're ready, bring a little bit more activation now to our entire body, exploring that a little bit more. We're going to do a practice called the quadrant pat down. This is something that I learned from my mentor and friend Jane Clapp, who is here in Toronto. And so to begin, we're just going to sort of select one side of our body and one quadrant. So I'm just going to start with my leg. Doesn't matter where you start this activity, and it doesn't have to be all four quadrants of the body. It can just be one half. But for today, let's do the whole thing, and then you can see what maybe feels good for you and something you want to bring into your everyday life. So I'm just going to select one leg, and I'm going to bend over whatever bending capacity my body's going to allow for today, and just bring my padding to the part of my leg below my knee. Just sort of patting the fronts, the sides of my shin. Maybe you can pat your foot. Just anywhere under that knee right now, just patting. And then we'll bring that up a little bit to the knee, patting the kneecap, behind the knee, on the sides. And then continuing to bring that padding up onto the upper part of the leg, front side, the inner and the outer side, and then onto the back of the thigh. Then we'll move up a little bit more to the front of the hip, the side of the hip. And then let's also bring a little bit of padding to the bum. That feels okay. And then we'll just let that go for a moment, pause. And see if you notice any difference between one leg compared to the other. Notice any difference in the space between one foot compared to the other. And then when you're ready, let's repeat that on the other side. So just again, bending over, and if we're doing this sitting in a chair, that's great too. So just patting below the knee to start. And now this time, notice if you have your gaze seems to look away from your body, and just see if you can bring it back to the actual action of patting, even listening to the sound of your hands making contact with the leg. And what I'm doing here is patting. You could do something a little more gingerly with tapping just the fingers, but we're not slapping. We don't need to be slapping our body to achieve what we're doing right now. Just something that sort of is saying, hey, energize the skin, because your skin is the largest sensory organ of your body, and this sort of patting is sort of just waking it up. Bringing it to the knees, back of the knee, moving up to the thigh again. Seeing if you can contact all surfaces, noticing if the gaze moves away, can you bring it back to your leg, task at hand, the front of the hip, side of the hip, back of the hip, again into the bum. And once again, just pausing for a moment, noticing any changes between the legs, the feet, maybe even the lower half of your body as compared to the upper half. And then when you're ready, we'll now come to the top part of our body. So choosing whichever side you like. We'll begin with the top of one arm. So starting at the shoulder, I'm just going to start to pat down the top side of my body, my arm. Again, watching as I go. Top side, come to the hand. And then give myself an applause. Give yourself an applause. Listen to the sound that your hands are making when they connect. And then we'll come back on the underside of the arm, back to your armpit, and onto front of your chest, and onto the back. And again, just pause and notice. Noticing any differences between one side of your body and the other side. And then finally, coming back to the last quadrant of us, starting from our shoulder, patting the top side of the arm, to the hands. Again, give yourselves an applause. You deserve it. And then the underside of the arm. All the way to the armpit. To the chest. To the back of the shoulder. And again, just pausing for a moment. I like to think of this practice as sort of activating my emotional container, and you might like to think about it like that too. When we activate this beautiful body of ours, this emotional container, it can be helpful to remind us that we are more than just what sits on top of our shoulders, right? We are a whole being for ourselves and for the world outside of us. This can be a really nice practice to bring sensations back into your body in a gentle way. That if you find you're someone that, maybe identifies with numbing out or feeling disconnected, this can be a really nice practice to kind of help you arrive back in your body in the present moment. And again, we'll just revisit our vertical space. Maybe pick up the feet a little bit, scrunch the toes again. And then bringing that awareness from the feet up to your hips. And then to the shoulders. And then finally back to the head. You notice any changes to this vertical organization of yourself. Feel more or less connected to the floor, more or less aware of this organization of your body. Just spend the next few moments bringing one hand to the top of your head. So thinking about pressing into the unconditional support of the ground below you. And thinking about lifting the head, the crown, growing your body up into your hand. Just pausing there for a moment. And then from there, start to lift up onto our toes. And as we do, we're going to start to float the arms up towards our ceiling, any amount. Pause. And then start to lower everything back down together. Heels and arms landing back to the first position at the same time if you can. And again, lifting on the toes, arms lift up. Noticing any wobbling. Just seeing if you can embrace some of that. If you need to come out of it, you come out of it and try again. And then allow everything to come back down to the start. One more time, just like that. Lifting up onto the toes as high as you can, arms up towards the ceiling. Maybe this time lifting the gaze up, noticing if that adds a level of challenge to your balance. And then when you're ready, starting to lower everything back down to the ground. This time, slightly different. Again, we're going to lift up onto our toes as the arms reach out to the sides. But this time, we'll keep one hand pointed towards your wall, and the other one will lift up towards the ceiling. And then we'll draw that arm back down to the T shape, and then lower everything back to the ground. Let's try that on the other side. So lifting up onto the toes. This time the other arm continues up towards the ceiling. Comes back to meet the side arm, and then everything lowering back down together. 2 more both sides, just like that. Lifting up onto the toes. One arm keeps going. Pause. Arm lowers to the T. Everything back down to standing. Lifting up. Arm lifts. Float the arm back down to meet the other. Lowering back down. One more just like that. And just notice any changes to the balance. Does it feel more challenging on one side than the other? To coordinate this balance with the arms. And then we'll just end with 3, with the arms moving the same way. So lifting up from the toes, arms lift the gaze if you like, and allow everything to float back down, arriving together. Noticing any changes now to the balance. I said balance and I got wobbly. And lowering back down. One more time, just like that. Lifting up. Arms continue. Allowing everything to float back down. Allowing the wobbles to happen. Finding our ground. So we'll move into a little bit of spinal mobility now. And I really encourage doing spinal work because if you relate to feeling stuck, especially when you're stressed, sometimes by having a little bit of this or this can help us feel a little less unstuck, at least physically. Because if you think about it, a lot of the time we're sort of physically stuck in different shapes to accommodate our day, whether it's our work shape, the drive shape, our Netflix shape. Nothing wrong with any of these shapes. However, sometimes we can get stuck in them. And so when we start to move our spine in different ways, that's going to be sort of a way to help us feel a little less stuck, especially in stressful situations. So to start, just find your feet under your hips. And we'll begin by taking the chin, the nose, the eyes over to one side of your room. I'm looking in the direction of one shoulder, any amount. And then I'm going to scan the horizon and come over to the other side, looking at the other wall of your room. And then just moving between these two positions. So rotating the neck, seeing if you can keep everything else still. And as you're doing this, maybe aware of some stretchiness on one side. And what you're looking not to sort of spend too much time in is if you are coming into any sensations that may be painful or even uncomfortable or feel a bit scary, then just see what happens if you reduce the range a little bit. So your range is going to be different than my range. Okay, beautiful. So from there, now let's bring a little bit of flexion and extension into our neck. So we'll drop our chin in towards our throat, maybe feeling some stretchy things on the back of our neck, maybe back of our upper back, even lower than that. And then we'll send the nose, the gaze up towards our ceiling, any amount. Again, finding a little bit of length, maybe some stretchy stuff in the front of our chest. And just notice as we start to move between these two positions, can you keep the action just in your head? Or are you sort of maybe rounding a little bit forward or arching a little bit back as you do, which are fine, but we're just looking to keep the action at the neck at this point. Beautiful. And then when you're ready, bringing the gaze back to the first position, we're going to create a little bit more rotational movement with our head. So thinking about sending our nose over towards one wall, and then we're going to bring that nose up towards the ceiling, and then carry that nose back down towards the opposite wall, and then the nose down towards the floor. So seeing if you can connect the dots with your nose. Now doing many different movements of our neck. And again, navigating a range that allows you to have this experience free of pain, free of any fear or real discomfort. And then we'll go in the opposite direction. So wherever you are, bringing your nose over to one side, up towards the ceiling, down towards the opposite side, and now pointing towards the floor. And again, just connecting these points at a speed and within control. And you may notice some noises, sensations coming from your neck, from your jaw even, some crunching or clicking and clacking, which again, as long as it's not painful, it's just articulating of different tissues and joints that may not have been asked to move in this way in a while. And then bring the gaze back towards the first position. So from there, let's bring a little bit more movement now into our whole spine. And I'm going to turn this way so you can see me. I'm going to root down through my feet. And I'm going to start by dropping my chin in towards my throat. I'm going to start to think about almost like a weight suspended from my forehead. And it's going to start to pull my head down. As my head starts to draw down, my chest is going to start to round out a little bit. So my upper back rounds. And as I continue to find a really heavy head, my mid back starts to round. And then a little bit more, starting to notice my lower back starting to round out. I'm going to pause here. If you'd like to bring your hands to the floor, that's great. If you'd like to bring the floor a little closer to your hands, we can just bring the blocks underneath if you have them. But you can also just see what it feels like to kind of round the spine and maybe find a sort of relaxed and free quality about your head. Maybe sort of shake the head from side to side. Can you allow your shoulders to feel really heavy, almost like they might connect with your ears? Maybe they do in some of your bodies. And then even sort of rustle out the wrists and the fingers. And then from there, in this round spine, starting to reverse this process, really pushing through the feet now, we'll start to draw the tailbone down towards your heels and starting to return the spine. You can imagine it bone by bone, reducing the rounding in the low back, the mid back, and the upper back. Gaze is the last to arrive. So coming back to having the head, the shoulders, the pelvis all stacked over your feet. Let's try that again. So head draws into the throat. Chin draws into the throat. Maybe sensing the shoulder blades spreading on your upper back. Rolling down bone by bone, vertebra by vertebra. Allowing yourself to come into a dangling, folding forward fold, maybe hands to blocks, maybe hands to floor. You're noticing there's a lot of tension on the back of your legs. A lot of people usually experience this. So you know what? Just bend your knees as much as you need to. This is about finding a real nice roundness of your spine, and don't let the backs of your legs sort of inhibit that for you. So just bend them as much as you need. And then when you're ready, again, pressing the ground away, driving through the legs, starting to roll the spine back up into its upright position. Head is last. And let's do that one more time. Chin tucks. Thinking about rolling through the front side of your body, maybe. Just going as slowly as you can, maybe noticing places where things kind of just clunk down. Smooth that out a little bit. And again, pausing at the bottom, allowing the head to sway, maybe the arms to sway a little bit. Heavy ears, heavy shoulders. And then when you're ready, pressing through the ground, start to roll back up. Rolling up through the back side of the body this time. Head and gaze arrive last. So one more roll down is going to bring us down to the floor. So draw that chin in. At your own speed, roll your body back down. And if you've got your blocks handy, or you can bring your hands to the floor, we're just going to come down now onto all fours. Whatever way you get there. And then you might appreciate having a little bit of padding under the knees. I know mine do. I'm going to borrow Cooper's toy here because it's kind of a perfect length, but it also makes a really weird noise, so I'll try to minimize that. But if you hear something weird, it's just the toy. Oh, we're good. So coming into a tabletop position, we're going to continue to explore some spinal articulation. But before we do, I just want you to kind of set your body up in a way that feels supportive to you. So maybe starting with where the hands are on the mat in relation to the shoulders. They could be right underneath, sort of stacked over each other, but maybe notice what it feels like to take the hands a little bit wider of the shoulders and maybe even a little bit forward. Just notice how that feels maybe in the wrists, in the shoulders, keeping the elbows as straight as you can, straight in your body. And then the same thing with our legs. So we could bring our knees right under our hips. I generally find I prefer to have my knees a little bit wider than my hips and my feet will come in a little bit. Again, do you, and you can edit that position at any point that you need to. So to start our spinal articulation, if you're familiar with cat-cow movement, we'll get there, but we're going to do it really slowly. So I want you to bring your awareness to your tailbone. That's on the back of the pelvis here. You could give yourself a pat there just to bring your awareness to it, get your brain to connect with it in your body. And from there, let's just start by first tucking the tailbone under, so drawing the tailbone down towards the floor. And as I do, I start to round out through my low back. And I'm going to see if I can bring a little bit more roundness to my upper back. And then even a little bit more roundness towards where my shoulders are, my upper back. And then at some point, starting to round out through my neck, allowing my head to drop any amount. And just really just pausing here for a moment in this flexed spine or this angry cat position. The spine rolled up towards our ceiling. And then bring your awareness back to the tailbone, starting from there first, starting to kick the tailbone out or sticking it out behind you as you start to bring a little bit now of an arch into the low back, a little bit more now into the mid back, and further a little bit more into the upper back. And then the head can lift any amount. So now creating this cow or camel-like shape with the spine arching towards the floor, pressing through the hands and the knees. And then when you're ready, attention back to tailbone. So tucking the tailbone under, rolling the spine up towards the ceiling, nice and slow. Head to be the last that arrives. And then sticking the tailbone up or out, arching now through, coming into the cow position. And then continuing to start from the tailbone, just maybe making this a little bit faster. It feels okay. So we're now smoothing it out into a cat-cow, always initiating from the tailbone. Let's do one more in both directions. And then coming back just to a neutral tabletop, what we're going to do is we're going to step 1 foot forward. And I'm going to turn to face you so you can see me. But I'm going to step my foot wide of my hands, and I'm going to bring one of my blocks. If you've got a block or you've got a stack of books. And I'm going to first start by making a bit of a tripod for myself here. If I sit up here for a moment, you'll notice that I could be here, and so could you, but maybe explore what it feels like to walk that foot out a little bit, create a diagonal from the hip out through the knee, and then more of a supportive base with this hand coming to a block, though, of course, fingerprints or hand. But just see if you can create this little triangle for yourself. And from there, when you're ready, this free arm, we're just going to reach it up toward your ceiling. And then from there, we're going to take that free arm that's up, we're going to reach it down and underneath us, start to curl our spine and take our gaze with us back behind us. So we're looking under our underarm, floor back there, maybe even bend that support elbow a little bit to bring you into more of a curved spine, twisted spine, if that feels okay. And then when you're ready, press into that support hand as you lift that arm back up towards the ceiling. And again, reaching and curling back down any amount, reaching your fingertips, maybe a little bit further on the floor this time. Again, reaching up. And one more time, we'll curl around and twist back down. And then this last time, let's reach that hand up. And we're just going to pause here for a moment. See if you can press the ground or the block away a little bit more. Reach up through those fingerprints. See if there's a point on your ceiling that you can just reach to. Reach, reach, reach. Feels okay, maybe finding a few breaths in this position. Otherwise, just really keeping focused on that reach towards that point on your ceiling. Beautiful. And then when you're ready to come out, we'll just bring that hand back to the ground. I'm going to move my block back out of the way for a moment as I step back, coming into tabletop once again. And so this time, notice what happens if you change the position of your body again for our next round of cat-cow. And maybe we come up onto our fist this time. Maybe we come down onto our forearms, which we can do in a few different ways, either a little bit higher off the ground or down on the ground. We can explore this next round of cat-cow in any of those positions. And again, just take a moment to find a supportive tabletop position for yourself, one that feels good in your body. So this time, instead of starting from the tailbone, we're going to start from the head. So maybe bring your hand to your head and remind your brain that this is your head. And when you're ready, let's start by scooping the chin in towards the throat. So now, starting to round the spine up through the upper back. Maybe finding a few more articulations to the mid-back. And then rounding out through the lower back as we start to tuck our tail under. So you could think about trying to bring your pubic bone in the front of your pelvis towards your nose. Just pausing here, pressing the ground away, rounding the spine. And then bring your awareness back to your head. That will lead the movement this time. Start to draw the nose, the chin forward, gaze forward any amount. Now starting to drop the sternum, the sensing of dropping the sternum towards your mat, and now arching through the upper back, the low mid-back, and now coming into more of an arch in the low back, so the tailbone starts to lift, stick out. Again, pressing through your limbs, just pausing in this extension or camel shape of your spine, and coming back to chin into the throat, rolling the spine up, rounding out through the upper back, mid back, lower back, tuck the tail, leading with the head, nose and chin forward, sternum drops, lowering the front side of the body towards your mat, any amount, tailbone releases and lifts, and then just coming back to starting with the head, navigating through maybe a bit more of a smoother cat-cow, but still with the intention of imagining trying to move every individual bone in your spine. Noticing if it feels different, harder, or easier to articulate your spine when you're initiating from the head. I know in my own body, and you might see this, is my pelvis and my head want to go at the same time. It's really, really funny. It's a lot of effort on my part, mental effort to keep my tailbone tucked while I move my head. And that might be true for you too, or something entirely different. Just one more in each position, wherever you are. And then coming back to your neutral position, getting ready now to step the opposite foot forward. So again, I'll come to face y'all. Just taking a moment to set your body up, organizing in a way that feels stable and spacious. Just notice what that feels like. Hand either on a block, fingerprints. When you're ready with that free arm, we'll lift it up towards the ceiling. You'll be finding a new point on your ceiling to bring your attention to. And then from there, we'll sweep that fingers down towards the floor, back behind you, underneath your armpits. Maybe bending the elbow a little bit, reaching, allowing the spine to come into this sort of rounded, curved, and twisted shape. Then when you're ready, press through that ground hand, reaching back up towards the ceiling. And rounding back underneath, bringing the hand between the grounded knee and your hand or block, any amount. And then reaching back up again. And curling under and around one more time. And then last time, pressing the ground away as you open up, finding a point, reaching up to that point. And as you do, also pressing the ground away through the stable arm, through the block. Reach. We take a few breaths. Notice how that feels in this position. Otherwise, just keep that attention towards reaching towards that point on your ceiling. And then when you're ready, lowering that hand, bringing that knee back behind you. And we're going to come back to a standing position. And you can do that in whatever way serves you best right now. I'm going to just flip onto the backs of onto my toes. And I'm going to use my blocks a little bit to bring me up. You could also do this with your hands on the floor. Whatever way you decide, you're going to press through your hands. You're going to lift up your hips. And staying on your tippy toes, you just start to walk your hands back towards your feet, allowing the heels to land. And you'll find yourself in this sort of rolled position again. You can start to roll the spine back up to the standing position. And when you're ready, just arriving back into your vertical space, noticing any changes or differences for yourself as you're now back into a standing position after spending some time on the ground. We'll just end off our movement part of our practice today, coming back to that moving mountain where we were balancing and moving our arms at the same time. Partial sun salutation if you do yoga, that's what it might feel like. So when you're ready, lifting up onto your toes, arms lift towards the ceiling. Allow everything to come back down, back to the supportive ground beneath you. Lifting up, arms lift. And everything floats back down. One more time. Up on the toes. Arms, maybe the gaze lifts. And then lowering back down. Adding in a little bit of complexity with the coordination now. Toes lift. Arms to T, one arm continues up towards the ceiling, lowers back down to catch the other arm, both lowering back down together. Toes lift, arms lift, one arm towards the ceiling, back to the T, back to our mountain pose. Two more just like that, both sides. Can mirror me or move at your own self-guided pace. Just being aware of how moving through these different positions now, do they feel any different than the first time we explored them? And we'll just end off with 3, like we began with. Toes lift, both arms up at the same time. And lowering back down. Now noticing if anything feels a little differently as we come to these final few balance movements than when we first tried them. And now just pause for a moment, standing in our vertical space. Coming back to the first part of our movement practice. Just again, noticing the space between our feet, the contact of our feet with the floor. Bringing that awareness up to our hips and pelvis. Drawing that awareness further up onto the shoulders, the rib cage. And then finally, bring that awareness all the way up to include the head. So again, just observing ourselves in our vertical space. Taking as much time as you need. I'm going to come back to a seated position, but again, just take as much time as you need to arrive back. We'll do a check-in once again, just comparing notes maybe with how we began our movement practice today. When you're ready, just a word or two describes your mind in this moment, quality of thoughts, mental focus or clarity. Next, your body. What sensations are you most aware of now? Notice your breath. Where are you experiencing it the most clearly at this point in practice? Even the quality of breath, does it feel different at all? Any shifts in your emotions, the things you're feeling right now? And your energy. Any differences in the energy since we started our practice, our movement practice today? And again, all is true, even if you notice nothing or were not able to associate with any of those points of check-in. Just notice that too. So coming back to our scale from 1 to 10, 1 being that spacey, shut down, low motivation state. 10 being that really revved up, lot of energy, almost uncontainable, overwhelmed state. And then 5 being somewhere in the middle. Your Goldilocks state. Not too high, not too low, just right. And then we'll just spend a little time now with some journaling. And if you're someone who journals, you have a practice already in place, feel free to go ahead and journal in the way that you need to. But I'm also going to offer a few prompts to help guide you if this isn't something you do a lot. And so the first prompt is just to make note of any shifts in your 5-point observation or scale between when we started practice today and to where you are now. And if you were able to sort of notice a shift, was there any activity or part of the practice where you noticed the shift happening? And then what intention could you set for yourself this week to carve out practice time every day just for yourself? Maybe that's getting up a bit earlier, turning off your screens for 5 minutes, working some practice time into your getting ready for bed schedule, or even perhaps just a midday break. Prioritizing yourself is key to managing stress. Just taking a few more moments there to jot some thoughts, some ideas, some observations down. If you don't feel like you've had quite enough time, I apologize. I wish we did have more. But you can always continue this after we finish up today, or you can always come back to it and watch the recording for the prompts. Just one more minute. And I'll just repeat those prompts again in case I said them too quickly for you. We're noticing any shifts in the 5 points of observation or even on our scale from 1 to 10. And was there an activity or part of our practice today where you maybe noticed that shift happening for you? And then what intention could you set for yourself this week to carve out at least 5 minutes of practice time? What could that look like for you? Okay. So just to connect some dots here, we're negatively affected by stress when we've not developed grounding and regulating practices or resources for coping with stressors. So let's imagine that this cup is our capacity to cope, and that the water in it is stress or stressors, big or small. So I've already got a little stress happening in my cup. So if you imagine I've got a pitcher and water pouring into my cup, might be small drips of stress, maybe like got a parking ticket, traffic, dogs barking for no reason, small drips. However you identify with small drips of stress, to bigger pours. So there's a lot more water going in the glass in one shot. And this could be more overwhelming experiences. Again, it's going to be different for each of us how we engage with this. But nonetheless, we've got water coming into our cup. And over time, if you imagine, this cup is going to fill up, and at some point it's going to overflow. And we can't stop the drips or pours because the stress, it's life. But what we can do is increase the size of our cup. So when we increase the size of our cup, we're going to be able to be more resilient, even in stressful situations. Be able to get our mind and body in the same time zone, not ruminating over the past or worrying about the future, but in the present moment where we have ultimate control. It's going to help us feel more grounded, balanced, and even center ourselves more quickly and effectively over time. Be more aware of what our needs are and take steps to get those needs met. Improve our capacity for decision making. And even shed light on when we might be reacting versus responding to a situation. And this maybe is going to allow us a bit of time to pause and step back, take a moment and observe, and determine the best way forward. So all of this to say, this is going to help us be able to have our own back. so that we can also be there for family, for friends, for students, for clients, for loved ones, for all humans. For me, this is the most special piece, and maybe a selling point for you that you need to invest the time in yourself first. The work starts with us, you and me, friends. So, and I can assure you that the positive shifts are possible. There's a lot of research that supports that even just 5 minutes of practice time a day can have a significant positive effect on your capacity to manage and cope with everything life chooses to throw at you. And the reality is, though, that most of us just don't have the resources in place to grow the size of our cup. But my hope is that some of what we explored today, and will continue to in the coming weeks, are going to help us stress-proof a bit more and build up our resilience. And by the way, we're all inherently resilient. We just need to be able to access it and harness it to our advantages. So, but in order to get there, we're going to need to put in the practice time. Pre-COVID, I could get to Germany, or I could get on a plane and fly to Germany. But just because I flew there and spent a week sightseeing and exploring, and maybe even trying to say some things in German, doesn't mean that I'm ready to speak German fluently. To be fluent, I need to learn and practice and make mistakes. I need to train myself to speak German, which I can do over time with lots of practice. So just like we can train ourselves to be more resilient to stress, but we got to practice. So speaking of practice, I'm going to offer a self-regulation tool for this week. If you want to just specifically stick with one, you can revisit the quadrant pat down, that self-regulation practice we did at the beginning of our movement part, the movement part. I have just a single video on that on my YouTube channel. And so see if you can practice it every day. Perhaps as a start to your day, if you need to feel a bit more energized. Sometimes it can be better than a cup of coffee. So just notice how it can bring some energy into your body, or even include it as part of your work schedule. If you spend a lot of time in front of a screen, you might find it as a helpful way to reconnect with your body, which might also reveal some handy info that your brain and body need a break from the screen time. So sometimes we just get so automatic and focused on our screen time, we just kind of become very unaware and disconnected from the rest of us. So even just patting the upper body can be a way to sort of bring some life back into that experience for us, to really embody our full emotional self. And then, of course, you can do that pat down at any time. You might be noticing you're feeling stressed or a lack of connection to your body, and something you can do with your kids, and mirror it with other family and friends and see how that sort of works for all of you. Okay, so in closing, again, this class will be added to my YouTube page called Movement for Resilience. Please send me an email if you have any questions or would like to know more about a certain topic relating to stress. I'll do my best to unpack it in a future class. And today's class, we're going to close with a mantra. And if you're not familiar with that word, it's just a statement or slogan that is repeated to aid in concentration or meditation that originates from Hindu and Buddhist traditions. And it's thought that by repeating a mantra out loud or silently within your own mind, it can help guide your thoughts to a frame of mind to achieve a goal or task. So for example, before speaking publicly or before even turning my computer on today, you might say, "I'm strong, I can do this," or "I believe in me." So while simple, a mantra can be incredibly powerful. So our mantra for these classes is going to be, "I am strong, I am capable, and I am resilient." So when you're ready, we're going to repeat this mantra together. You might see how it feels to bring your hands over your heart in prayer position, even give yourself a gentle hug, or just leave the hands at your sides on your lap Whatever position feels best for you right now. And then repeating after me out loud or silently. I'm going to go for 3 rounds. I'll start. I am strong. I am capable. I am resilient. I am strong. I am capable. I am resilient. I am strong. I am capable. I'm resilient. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this class helpful and will take elements of it into your everyday life. Until next time, be well, my friends.